Ever wondered how leaders in the Oval Office or the Corner Office are selected? In this presentation, I'll give you an overview of the theory and findings in the paper that Philippe Jacquart and I published in the Academy of Management Journal. The main point of the paper is to show that leaders are evaluated via one of two routes. On one hand, we have the Romance of Leadership movement, which suggests that leaders are attributed certain characteristics on the basis of what we call performance signals, how well the organization is doing. On the other hand, we have the realists, who suggest that what leaders do, how they act, what they say, really matters. Now, these two perspectives traditionally have been at loggerheads, and the point of our paper was to reconcile these two approaches. Which matters more for leader selection and why? The contribution of our paper has to do with the concept of attributional ambiguity. When the attribution route is strong, we have clear signals about the performance of leaders. It's a sort of litmus test in chemistry. However, what happens when the attributional signals are fuzzy? This is where we believe the inferential mechanisms, what a leader is like, will matter most. And what we care about there is evaluating how charismatic the leader is. So basically what we are looking at is how inferential signals and attributional signals interact in predicting leader selection. In study one, we found that US presidents are selected via the two mechanisms that I explained before, the attributional and inferential mechanisms. What was very interesting in the study is that charisma mattered mostly when the attributional signals were fuzzy. In other words, when voters were not sure whether to reward or punish the incumbent party. Important to see here is the US president as the CEO of a big organization, the United States of America. So if things are going well, they will reward the incumbent or the incumbent's party. If things are going poorly, they will punish them. So what we did is we extended a model by Raymond Fair of Yale University, who's a macroeconomist, and in this model, he measured GDP growth over the short term and long term, GDP inflator, in other words, the inflation rate, and incumbency to predict who wins. But what this model completely ignores is what happens when these economic signals are mitigated, fuzzy. In other words, the litmus test is not clear. Our theory suggests that's when charisma will matter most. And that's precisely what we found, and we were also able to predict ex ante who would win the US presidential election in 2012. In study two, we examined CEO reappointment decisions. We manipulated how well the company was doing on the stock market, either very well, mitigated performance, in other words, fuzzy, not sure whether they're doing well or badly, or very poorly. We also manipulated CEO charisma by how the CEO was described by others, as well as how the CEO spoke. What we found, again, confirming the first study, was that charisma mattered most under conditions of attributional ambiguity. That is, when performance signals were fuzzy. The litmus test was not clear. Surprisingly, we also found that charisma mattered even under strong performance signals. That is, CEO reappointment was much higher when the leader was charismatic and had strong performance signals. And we found the same thing too when performance signals were very negative, that CEOs were significantly more likely to be reappointed when they were charismatic. We believe that the phenomenon of attributional ambiguity applies to a wide array of situations. Let me give you two examples. Take the case of hiring a new professor. Suppose that the candidates are very junior. On what basis do we evaluate them? Firstly, we would look to see if they have a strong publication record. Those are the performance signals. We would also look to see how charismatic they are, whether they are good communicators. Now, what happens if candidates are very junior and they don't have a lot of performance baggage behind them? In other words, performance signals are fuzzy. That's when we're going to turn to the inferential route. We're going to use certain indicators of their charisma to make the decision. We believe that people in other situations make similar decisions. Take, for example, the case of interviewing a candidate for a job in a company. If they have a lot of experience and strong performance signals behind them, then the probability that they will be selected will be very high. Of course, If their performance signals are negative, they will not be selected. But again, if performance signals are mitigated, that's when the impression will count, how charismatic the person is in the interview. Thank you for watching this presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed reading our paper too.